I'm about to take you through our CRO checklist, the same one that we've used to build over 538 websites and do over $113 million on Shopify. After growing my own Shopify brand to $25 million and helping other brands grow to 7 and 8 figures plus, including from brands from 1 million to 5 million and 3 million to 30 million, I'm going to give you the exact recipe and secrets that we use to optimize websites' conversion rate. Because the key difference from growing your store from 100K a month to 500K a month or beyond, even to $1 million plus, comes down to your conversion rate. How well structured is your website? Are you converting the traffic that you are bringing in? And are you really optimizing your website performance? At the end of the day, acquisition costs are going to continually get more expensive. We see this continuous trend of CPMs and general impressions on the internet are more competitive now than ever. And that trend is probably going to continue to increase. So what CRO is all about and what we're going to walk through today is how to better convert the traffic that you are getting. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Today, I'm going to be walking you guys through our CRO checklist. It covers everything from the homepage, general theme, UI, UX practices, how to think about your cart and checkout experience, landing pages. We cover it all. We're going to go a deep dive into our CRO checklist. Let's get into it. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what you see here is our CRO checklist. We use this when we're looking at a website and want to go through and making sure we're optimizing all pieces of the funnel. So what you see here is the overview tab. This gives us an oversight view of the website in totality. So looking at things like the general website experience, homepage, landing page, collection pages, product, add to cart, checkout, and thank you page. These are the main pieces of the funnel that we're looking at for Shopify experience. What you can see here is the different checkpoints. These are general practices of what we look to for best CRO performance. And you'll see scoring for can be improved, to do, or is already improved, and then checking items off as complete. So in this case, checkout page is complete, thank you page, still have other progress and pages to be completed. So let's go ahead and dive right in. You'll notice that you can go click directly into a tab. Okay, and so what you see here is our checklist for looking at a website. The first thing we'll do is look at the general website performance. And so this can have components such as your header, the overall user experience, looking at the footer, search bar, and overall website pages. Think of these as more of your universal page aspects. Again, your header bar, your menu, your footer, search. Those things are going to be consistent, typically ubiquitous on all your pages. So the general website would just be those components that are pretty common amongst all your pages. And you'll notice here that we have a checklist. So for status, we have a drop-down box of is it currently in good status, could be improved, or something that needs to be completed. So the difference between these is basically queuing it up, and then irrelevant if we're not relevant in this case. So you'll notice that this has a scoring system, basically a stoplight, red, green, yellow, green being good, yellow could use improvement, red is like, hey, this is a pretty major item. And what we have here is also references for both the desktop and mobile of what that looks like in a good completed state. So if we're trying to strive for green in all the fields, then our designer would come through, look at the example. In this case, on click, the empty cart widget should display shop our best sellers. So by default, most Shopify themes are just going to have an empty cart. Instead, that has real estate on it. People can come to that page. So we find it better to instead direct people to other specific collections or think about other actions they might want to do. So here's an example of that. Notice how this cart is displaying other collections that a user can then go into. This is a better user experience than just having an empty cart and saying, hey, your cart is empty. That doesn't give any sequential step in the overall funnel. So that's like an example of this first item. Let's suppose that your website has the default standard of your cart is empty. So what I would do is put this as a to-do factor. And you can notice how this also has a scoring and weighted system and what needs to be done. And so this is taking into proximity the general score of the item itself, and then in measure of the consistency of the rest of it. So basically a weighted score. And this will also give a priority rank case. So just a couple of these, for example, on our header bar, general best practices. For the cart, making sure that you're linking to best sellers, shopping widget, clearly informing overall promotions. So in this case, if we're trying to upsell, increase the AOV, we want to incentivize people to get away to the next threshold. And so, hey, you're $26 away in this case from getting free shipping. These type of items are really helpful for the overall cart experience. Heat maps, making sure that you have those installed. If we're using something like Microsoft Clarity, track overall performance, we want to be able to dive into that. Notice how this is more so just the website backend items integrated. So some of these are also like app related or program integration. And so what would happen is our designer would come through. We would say, hey, these all need to be done. item. We can then export this item, and we're actually building a custom workflow for just exporting this file, then uploading it into ClickUp, which is what we use for our project management system. But what would happen is we would be scoring a website. We'd come through and say, let's say we have all 5 of these items to do. We would export that item, provide it to our designer, get updates on that, and they would come through. Once it's completed, we can change these factors to be in good standing, and then lastly, check them off the list. And some of these you might also find are just not relevant. In this case, it could be for whatever reason, if you're not having specific promos or other items aren't relevant. In those cases, we're basically checking them off as not relevant, and then same thing, can remove them from the list. So what this does is just gives us a very actionable list for what things to do on CRO. So what I want to do is just scan through the general document, highlight specific components, and tell you what things that we're generally thinking about, and then also pull up some references. We have the general website, again, thinking about the header, the user experience, footer, search bar, overall items. These can be things like the logo, page load speed, main call to action, some of those just general commonalities that you might have, banners, things like that. And then if we drill down into the homepage, we have general best practices. So one that we often like to do is personalizing stores, having a founder story that might not be relevant in all brands' cases. They might not have a founder story that they're comfortable or even want to share publicly, or it might be a conglomerate of individuals and not necessarily that type of story or messaging. So that would be like a good example of where you could mark something as irrelevant. And so going through that homepage would include things like the general website, CTAs, main products and collections and categories, and finally testimonies, getting social proof, getting PR logos, customer reviews, adding all that in. For a landing page, we would have things like making sure that it's easily accessible to get a hold of support. So whether a phone number, a live chat, making sure there's no external links. Typically for landing pages, we'll do what's more called a squeeze page. So not showing our footer, not showing our menu, making sure that we're keeping people focused on just one singular course of action. So that's a really common thing that we'll use on our landing pages. And then call to action section. This is really critical. Again, typically your landing pages, oftentimes it'll have more focus on educating on a product and just having one singular call to action. So we have a lot of pieces into that, how to support the call to action, surround the USPs around it, using quantity and real-time scarcity to push it through. Those are all items that we look for. And then lastly, going into the product, it could be a service as well, going to that description, what are the visual components, how we incorporate FAQs, the technical specifications if relevant, different images and content supporting it, testimonies, conversion boosters, whether that be urgency, cross-sells or upsells if relevant, highlighting discounts, product description. So these are things for our landing pages. And then collection pages, looking at product filters. This is really common for stores with, I would say, getting over like 500 products, getting to the thousands or tens of thousands. Generally, the filtering and the search becomes exponentially more important the larger your store size and SKU size. So we see a lot of very suboptimal filter setup. And so we walk through that as far as making sure that the filters are relevant, auto expanding or collapsed whenever necessary. So if you have a specific component, like for a theme, it might be more theme related or seasonality, we might have those filters expand by default so we can better emphasize that user experience. Product page, tying in components with the overall website, again, in the shopping and live chat experience, some of the different product sections, making sure we have general practices such as product length, the images, making sure that we have a good display of carousel type of images, navigation between them. Same thing for call to action. Notice how much detail we have for the call to actions in both on the landing pages and product pages. I always tell businesses this, you want to keep the main thing, and very often the time that's related around this button. You never want to forget what is the next piece in the sequence you want someone to be completing. And so having a sticky add to cart, making sure that it's always prevalent, that's going to be really helpful in making sure that you're keeping the main thing. So testimonies, showing reviews on making those very prevalent, obviously having a lot of social proof, different ways we can go about talking about total product shipped. You oftentimes want to think about the aggregate of it. So if you have a ton of different product line, for example, and you have maybe 20 reviews on all of these, but collectively amongst them, maybe you have 500,000 customers or 500,000 products shipped. Focus on that later component. I see these stores with really big SKU lines that don't aggregate that social proof. And on their individual product pages or individual collection pages, it's a lot weaker of a claim because you can only see maybe 4, 5, 10, 20 reviews associated with the product without seeing that larger picture of, hey, this business has serviced over 500,000 customers. That's the main emphasis that you really want to capture. And then lastly, we have the add to cart page, thinking about supporting that with social proof, any upsells or cross sells we can have in that, or directing them to other collections if necessary. Okay, what we're next going to do is do a live takedown of a website. I'm going to show you the exact process I would follow. So this is our root base template. What I would do here is come here and make a copy. And I'm I'm going to be auditing Cable and Cotton today, and it'll default to a blank status. And I'm going to do the product page today. So Cable and Cotton, they sell these LED lights that light up decoration that people can use in home. So I'm going to be auditing this product page today and showing how I would be using the checklist in this example. So let's go through our overall audit. I have the website pulled up, and we have the first item: online shoppers can ask questions via live chat or phone numbers with details. We're a big fan of making it very easy for customer support. Live chat is a really great option. There's really great AI systems that can help connect you, answer questions, and also just show that there's a level of trust with you. So we don't really see any of that on this page or any level of that customer support. Next item: navigation features product details, image, sections, availability, pricing that remains visible on up and down. Basically a sticky add to cart. Notice that this is the main action we want. If I'm scrolling around reading reviews, that item disappears. So that's no longer relevant. Back button takes us to the previous user page. So that's an item that is good. We could also cross that off as being done. There's an option for customers to enter their email for product availability notifications. This would be more relevant if you have items that are not in stock. So this would be a good example of something that you might put as irrelevant. Moving into the product section, highlight the main title by making it look more prominent compared to other content is the title. In this case, baby boy. It is prominent. It's a little weak, I would say. It's not very descriptive. Baby boy doesn't really tell me much, but there's a level of it being there, so I could say could be improved. Full title, yes, it's under 65 characters. I would say it's actually too short. There's also no SEO type of keywords in here, so the way I would make this better is make it a little bit longer. I would call it baby boy LED lights, something like that, or fairy light sets, baby boy blue, something like that. Whatever the search terms are showing, if it's more color related, if it's more baby related, whatever the search terms, I would probably support it with that. I would still say the title's not good, so I'm going to put that as can be improved. Descriptive words, this is a good example. Yeah, it's not very descriptive, so I'd say this could be to do. Emphasize key product benefits and use power words: limited, special, unique, durable, new. It has some form of that. Perfect as a baby shower gift, talking about the gifting components, talking about the color components, where you would use it, nursery, baby boy's room. So it has some elements of that. I would say the copy could be slightly improved, but it's in an okay status. Talking about other USPs, I don't see examples of that, so I would put that as to do. And overall reviews. This is a really big miss that I see actually on this page, is that notice how there is no reviews component up here, but if you scroll down, there's over 3,000 reviews, but you don't see that on the title. So I'm coming up here. This is the first main call to action that you want a user to take, and there's zero social proof supporting that up here. You want me to make this in purchase and investment, but I have zero social proof to support that. So that's like a really great example of what really needs to be improved. Photo gallery underneath, don't see like that. What I would be emphasizing is you have the product detail, but there's zero user content. There's zero emotional experience. If this is related to someone's baby boy's bedroom, it's a very emotional experience for parents decorating and outfitting a room for their child. Could be way more of a story told in this versus we sell commodities LED lights. Notice that difference in framing of talking about we sell LED lights versus you are outfitting your baby's room with the perfect experience. Like it's a completely different frame where it's a complete different incorporation of that emotional experience. And so that's another great example of that needs to be improved. Same thing for videos. Don't have any component of that. The images frankly needs work. Again, I would have some form. Right now it's showing kind of a before and after and just really product focus. This contrast and lights, in my opinion, is not a very good showcasing of that. Thumbnail images, this needs to be done. Image zoom, not available. We recommend including that for different sizes. This item I would have to test on mobile device, but it's not relevant because they don't have other images. So this would have to be to do. And same thing for arrows. This is another item. So notice how like this whole product section has a lot of work that it needs to do overall. Call to action, white space, pull it up on mobile. I would say right now there's too much scrolling. Notice how much real estate this menu bar is taking up, and then the amount of scrolling to add to the cart, that is not recommended. I would say this could definitely be improved. The most visible, this is definitely not the case. The add to cart is kind of hidden. So I'd say making that larger. And notice how it's also for color. I would have more of a contrast. There's no reason to make this lights highlighted. I would have this item be a different color and keep the main call to action always its own unique bright item. So there's a lot more items that you can see we can go through, but this is overall how our team is incorporating this into it. And so you can see what would happen next is then I can then export this file, provide it to my designer. They have all the examples for this whole thing. So they can come into any piece of this section and say, okay, what does this look like if we do have more images? What does it look like for any one of these items that are to do? And so there you have it, our complete CRO checklist. Please copy and steal this file. Use it to optimize your own Shopify brand. We've used this on literally hundreds of different websites and have driven over $113 million in sales with these strategies. strategies. So I really encourage you to steal this file, use it for your own business, and see what you can do. If you want our team to personally take you through the CRO checklist and optimize your website, just reach out in the link below, apply and see if you're a fit, and we'll get in contact. Happy scaling, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next video.